Cash App is just allegedly Ian. And with that, we'll go to the very next guest. C3PO. Thank you. Appreciate that. What's up? How's it going?
Hi, I'm doing good, man. Yeah, I want to be conversing about God isn't real.
Yeah. So what's your how old are you?
Yeah, I'm 18.
Okay. And what religion?
Christian.
That's a dumb question, my bad. What's your strongest argument for the existence of God, which does not involve personal experience?
My strongest argument for the existence of God would possibly be I could pose you the motion argument, possibly.
Yeah, so give the argument.
Yeah, so like formally, like a syllogism or what?
Yeah, just like if you want to give like a summary too, that's fine.
So like basically the argument that Thomas Aquinas posed would be that for something to be put in motion, there must be a mover holding. Well, actually, before I even pose the argument, I must know your position if you hold to the Big Bang or not.
Uh, yeah, but I think that I believe in I believe in infinite cycles of big bounces and big crunches. So I think the universe has always existed.
The universe has always existed, so the universe is infinite. You hold to that position.
Yeah, I hold that it just goes back infinitely.
Okay, and could there be an infinite cycle of previous causes leading to a present cause? Is that a possibility? And if
Yeah,
so,
I don't see why not.
can you
I
demonstrate?
don't see what the impossibility of that is.
No, like, could you like demonstrate that?
Yeah, sure. So the argument's just going to be that time has always existed, or at least that time can't be created. So the first premise is that creation is a change of states. The second premise is that a change of states requires a sequence of states. And the third premise is that a sequence of states is only able to be traversed via time. From this, we can deduce that in order to create, time must exist, which means time itself cannot be created, because if it were to be created, time would already exist. But if it hasn't yet been created, then time does not exist, which means time itself cannot be created, which means time stretches back infinitely.
So for something to be like actualized, there must be like time during that
Yeah, so in
actualization.
order for you to have a change of states, there needs to be time.
So
Otherwise, if there was no time, then it would just be the same state.
yeah, so like at the like holding to like the position of scientists, right? At the inception of the universe, time was a thing then.
Yeah, I just told that time has always existed.
Wait, so you hold to the Big Bang, yet you think the universe has
I
been
think there was stuff before the Big Bang too.
what stuff?
So the data that we have on dark energy seems to indicate that the universe is going to go through a big crunch. That it's currently expanding, but it's going to stop expanding and it's going to start contracting. And when it starts contracting, then it's going to be in the exact same state as what caused the Big Bang in the first place, which means that there's like a rapid expansion and like a rapid contraction again. So I just think that it goes through infinite cycles of rapid expansions, rapid contractions, and that the Big Bang was just one in this cycle of rapid expansions.
But is there any other is there any other proofs like pointing to another rapid expansion, or is it specifically the Big Bang?
Oh yeah, just like yeah. The thing that's pointing to it is the big crunch, which would be followed by a big bounce.
Mm-hmm.
So
After the Big
the
Bang,
Big Bang is a big bounce. Yeah, the dark energy data is pointing to that. Yeah.
have there been any other instances of anything like what you like just formulated now, contrary to the Big Bang?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I hold that there's like infinite series of this going in both directions. That in the future there's going to be infinite big bounces, big crunches. In the past, there's been infinite big bounces, big crunches.
But you can like what's the word? You can't accurately deduce that there'll be infinite quote unquote like
Oh yes, I
Big
can.
Bangs.
By the fact that time can't have a beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're holding to the position that there will be a multiplicity of Big Bangs, and you can't demonstrate that, like you can't like logically deduce that. I don't know how you're concluding with that.
Oh yeah. So it's just going to be an evidential argument at that point. For cosmology, I'm just relying on the evidence. The evidence seems to indicate infinite cycles of big bounces and big crunches, but I can deduce infinite time.
You can deduce infinite time. Can you demonstrate that?
Yeah, I just did. Yeah, that time can't be created.
What was the syllogism for that again?
Yeah. So premise one, that creation is a change of states.
Okay.
Premise 2, that a change of states requires a sequence of states.
A change of states requires a sequence of states
Yeah.
in every instance, or specifically when
Yeah,
referring to
in every instance, a change of states, there's going to be some sequential order to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a
Conclusion.
sequence of states is traversed via time.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, just that if you had your sequence of states, but they were not traversed by time, then you wouldn't have a sequence of states. They would all just be the same state. So in order to have different states that you go from one state to the next state, you need time.
I don't think like the hierarchy of like potentials and actuals agree with that, because that's not posited in the actualization argument.
Wait, so which premise are you rejecting?
Third, could you repeat it or reiterate?
Yeah. That a sequence of states is only traversed via time. So you reject that a sequence of states is traversed via time?
Could you like demonstrate that for me?
Yeah, so we can just do a proof by contradiction. Presuppose that a sequence of states is not traversed by time. That means that in no time you go from state 1 to state 2 to state 3, all over the span of like 0 seconds, which means that you actually wouldn't go to any of these states
okay, I see, I see,
because
I
they would
see.
all just be the same state.
Okay. Okay. I could agree. The conclusion.
Yeah, so, well, the conclusion is just that creation requires time.
And that's contrary to the Big Bang, or what?
No, it's not. Because I just told that time existed before the Big Bang.
Yeah, but I don't think like I don't necessarily think you could bring sufficient proofs to point to that, or
Yes, I
unless
can.
you
Yeah,
can.
yeah. So there's the one that I just gave, and then there's also the quantum eternity theorem.
Yeah, theorem.
Yeah, the quantum eternity theorem holds that the universe is eternal.
Eternal. So does eternality like negate inception?
Yeah,
Something that's eternal doesn't have an inception in every case.
yeah, just that it doesn't like come from somewhere. If that's what you're asking, that it's always existed.
Yeah, that's not the definition of eternality.
Oh, okay, wait. So I'm not sure what definition you're using, but all this one takes it is that the universe has always existed.
Could you like how could you provide the argument for that? Like
Yeah,
not
it's just the quantum eternity theorem. It derives from quantum mechanics. All it states is like very simply that if there's a non-zero amount of energy in the world, that the universe has always existed.
Wait, repeat that?
Yeah, that if there's a non-zero amount of energy in the world, then the universe has always existed, which is in line with the time argument as well.
Quantum eternity
Did
theory.
Ortho, did you accept his syllogism on time? Did we finally get a conclusion there?
No, we didn't conclude yet. We're on the fourth premise, I believe.
No, there is no fourth premise. The conclusion is that creation requires time. If you accept the three premises, then we have it that creation as a change of states requires a sequence of states, and a sequence of states would require time to traverse it, which means that creation requires time, which means time cannot be created.
Yeah, it holds that, but like posing that syllogism, you're arguing for like an infinite regress being logical, right?
Well, yeah, that's not just logical, but necessary.
Nece- an infinite necessary in which circumstance? In all
Necessary in
circumstances.
the fact that that is like the world that we've existed in. That because time is this way, because in order to traverse states, time needs to exist, then there can't be a state where time comes into existence, because in order to get from the state where time does not exist to the state where time does exist, you would need time to cross this chasm.
But would you hold to that consistently, that an infinite regression is required for all instances? Like
For time, I would just hold that time has always existed. I'm not sure where that like what that would hold for the rest of the question.
yeah, but like if you're holding to that consistently, the reductio would be. I could just ask you the same question. Like, do you think humans will live infinitely, or would there be a
An individual human,
no, like the human race?
evidence would suggest no.
How come?
It's possible, but evidence would suggest no.
But holding to that like infinite regress, are you positing that an infinite regress is necessary in every circumstance, or only
In every circumstance, no, certainly not.
so only in the
In some circumstances, that it's true that time has always existed.
Can you give me another circumstance other than the inception of the
Wait,
universe?
but we just covered one circumstance. Why do I need to give you another circumstance?
Because then, if not, it's going to be special pleading.
It's not special pleading, it's just proven.
Yeah, but you're giving me one circumstance. That's why I'm
Wait,
asking.
wait, is it special pleading to can you give me another circumstance where God created the universe?
So you're just like openly deviating now, right?
No, wait, because so this argument, if you want to take this argument and apply it to the things that you believe in, it's just going to lead to a really bad place for you because you think that God's like you would be special pleading for God constantly in your worldview. My argument is simply that time has no beginning, and I gave you a syllogism of which all the premises you agreed to.
Wait, what would be your definition of like special pleading?
Special pleading is when you apply the identical principle differently in two scenarios.
What?
Just when you apply a principle inconsistently.
Okay. Inconsistently. And do you believe that what you just said would be inconsistent? Because
No, I don't think there's anything inconsistent with saying like some things go back forever, like time, for example, and then some things are grounded in like other things. For example, if I said like Jerry's a bachelor, that's just going to be grounded in my definition of bachelor, and it doesn't really go deeper than that.
yeah, but it won't be in some circumstances unless you're able to show how like because some will be pointing to like a multiplicity of things, right? So if you can show me another circumstance, then I would agree with you.
I'm just holding this circumstance. You've already accepted all the premises. I don't need to show you another circumstance. You have already accepted all the premises which actually disprove your God in the first place.
It disproves God.
Yeah, if you think God's made time, then it disproves God.
I don't understand how you concluded with that, but I want to stick on
Yeah,
that.
because creation of time is impossible.
That's not what you were demonstrating. You were demonstrating an infinite regress being logical.
So I was demonstrating that creation requires time. One of the implications of this is that time has always existed, but it has like the double value of also disproving that God can create time because time can't be created.
Time can be created. Did you pose an argument for that?
Yeah, I'm confused. One that you agreed to all the premises for, even.
Oh, so basically the argument that time can't be created is because for something to be created, it requires time.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's also true that in science we know that time and space are a fabric, which would mean space would also be eternal.
Which means God can't create the universe. Yeah.
Because God can't create something eternal or infinite.
Yeah, if it's always existed, then God can't create it.
Is the concept of God being not absolutely necessary being not also infinite and eternal?
Is it also, well, I don't believe in a God, but you believe in time, and time has always existed.
Yeah, but like if we're holding to that like if you're like critiquing my beliefs, right? And if we're holding to the presupposition that God is eternal, infinite, and all these attributes.
So you could hold this, but this ends you up not in theism. This ends you in, I think, demiurgism, because you would believe that God existed with the universe until he decided to create. That's not theism, that's called demiurgism. It's like what Plato held to.
Wait, what would you hold theism to be?
Theism is going to be when all of existence, everything that exists, has a direct causal chain back to God.
Yeah, but that's not like exactly what I was arguing for. Like
That would be just one aspect of it. Like theism is just a belief in a God where God is like a, depending on what your theism is, at least God is like the cause of all things and is an immaterial mind.
and like holding to this position, I don't understand how it can negate the possibility of time being infinite. Just for arguments. Just for
Because
arguments.
if time can't be created, then God is not the cause of time.
I don't think the syllogism that you brought specifically concludes that time cannot be created because
So it concludes that creation requires time, which means that you can't create time because before you've created time, time does not exist. So that means that the necessary condition for creation would not be met, which means time itself cannot be created.
won't the argument be that that God is out of creation and outside of time?
You wouldn't be holding that God's outside of time, you'd be holding that God's outside of logic.
Outside of logic, can you demonstrate?
Yeah, because you would need to. So when God creates, is it a change of states?
Was that a question?
Yeah, when God creates, is it a change of states?
Sure.
Yeah, then the rest of the argument just follows. That when God creates, time needs to exist.
Not necessarily.
Because a change of states requires a sequence of states, and a sequence of states requires time. Which you can say that God exists outside of time. That's fine, but you would need to have at least two eternal objects. Like it would be the universe with time and space existing with an infinite past, and then it would be God existing simultaneously, and then after infinite seconds pass, God decided to make something.
But so for God to exist, outside of time, there must be other things, beings, entities that also exist outside of time.
So the argument is just that the only way out of this is to hold that God existed with time eternally, that there's two eternal objects. Thanks so much, Protist. Appreciate it.
Was that the only way out of this, quote unquote?
Oh, I mean that's the only successful way that I've heard.
But that God existed with time eternally.
Yeah, but then that means that you have no access to the like first mover argument.
How come?
Because if time has always existed, then that means that you believe in like an actual infinity, which undermines your premise.
How do I believe in an actual, like if I was a whole
Because time has always existed, there's been infinite seconds that have happened.
Okay, so why would that not be possible?
Why would that not be possible? Well, that's fine. Then you just need to continue with the argument, keeping in mind that an actual infinite is possible.
The reason I'm asking that is because isn't that what you hold to?
An actual infinite is possible, yeah.
In every circumstance, or only in the inception of the universe?
And I'm confused by the question. In some circumstances, it's possible.
Such as the creation of the universe, and what else?
Yeah, I'm agnostic to like the exact circumstances, but what I do know is that time has always existed, as we agree on.
Yeah, that won't be special pleading, unless, or like if you're
Well,
agnostic.
because I'm just agnostic to when I don't need to identify every circumstance that an actual infinite is possible to identify that this is an actual infinite that actually exists.
No, not every. I'm literally asking for just one other.
Oh, so you could hold that. Do you think that there's like an infinite set of? Do you think that the universe stretches infinitely? Do you think that there's like a final day?
Pardon?
Do you think that there's a final day?
A final day, like the day of judgment, the biblical narrative?
No, just like, do you think that there's like going to be an end of time?
What in its literal sense, or like according to the Bible?
And because if you want to defend the Bible, then you have a whole host of other problems, because then you would need to prove the Bible. But if
Or like would the Bible not be
unless you want to turn the conversation to a conversation of you trying to prove the Bible,
would the Bible not be like epistemically justified?
what's your okay? Yeah, go for it. Prove the Bible. Go for it.
Yeah, like would the Bible not be epistemic justified? That's one you to be like on the negative side.
I don't think so. I see no epistemic justification for the Bible.
So like following like the Cartesian definition of something to be epistemically justified, you not believe that the Bible would have internal consistency, corroborating reports, and attestation of its reliability, and like the historical context of it.
Just that it's like denied, like it's historically denied at like every level.
So the crucifixion of Jesus specifically, would that be historically denied?
Yeah, so so parts of it happened, but all the interesting stuff didn't. All the supernatural stuff didn't happen.
What is that like an argument of stuff from silence or what?
Yeah, so we can just go through like part by part. We could start with like the resurrection. We could talk about the miracles, that there's like no evidence and the internal consistency is like whack.
The internal consistency of the Bible is whack?
Yeah.
Can you please demonstrate that first?
Yeah, pretty easily. Yeah. So was Jesus executed on the preparation day for Passover, as is said by John, or was he executed on Passover, as is said by Mark, Matthew, and Luke?
Could you bring the verses?
Yeah, sure. And Justin, if you want to help out with this one, since I know that you're the Bible scholar.
Yeah, I'll pull up my list of contradictions.
Yeah, but do you know the verses off the top of your head that would say that it's like the preparation day? In John versus.
I do have them listed, but you'll have to give me a minute to get my computer.
Yep, John preparation day. Preparation day verse. Okay. 1914. John 1914, I think.
John 19:14. Let's see. John 19:14. Okay, and it reads, and it was the preparation of Passover and about the 6th hour, and he said unto the Jews, behold your king.
Yep.
Then what's the second verse?
For you like the Mark verse?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's just going to be the fact that the Last Supper is Passover supper.
Okay. What's the argument?
The argument is that if you're executed on the preparation day for Passover, then you can't be executed on the day after the date that you were executed.
Like the preparation of Passover?
So okay, wait. I'm sorry. So the general principle is just going to be if you're executed on day X, you can't also be executed on day X plus 1.
Could you demonstrate this according to the Bible?
To be clear, what he's saying is that the preparation day is before the Passover meal. And according to the Bible, he was taken into custody the night of preparation day. So he could not have shared the Passover meal with the disciples.
He could not have shared the Passover meal with the disciples because the Last Supper was on. I don't understand your argument, man.
The Last Supper is occurring the day after he was brought into custody.
How have you concluded with this?
Because he says that I have longed to eat this Passover meal with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Passover meal is after the day of preparation. The day of preparation is the day before Passover starts.
Yeah, what's the specific verse that you're referring to in Mark? I just want to be on a solid ground here.
To eat this Passover meal verse. I have a Luke verse that comes up, Luke 22:7-20, but of course, because so much of it is copied from Mark, I would presume that it's also somewhere in Mark, but let me see if I can find
copied
that.
from Mark.
Yeah. Huge sections of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like half of it is copied. It's ripped straight from Mark, yeah.
What? Because they're consistent with each other. How have you concluded with this?
Because they give the same explanation, they give the same description, word for word, in the exact same orders, because it's like just a copy paste from Mark over to Luke for like half of it.
That's just not the case, because of course they're going to have similarities if they're recording the same events.
They are word for word identical in many places.
Can you give me an example of one of those places?
Yeah. Okay. We could do Mark 1:40-42 and Luke 5:12-13. So the Mark verse, and calling out to him, there comes to a leper and kneeling and saying to him, if you wish, I can be cleansed. And moved with compassion, he stretched out his hand and touched him and says to him, I wish it be cleansed. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. And then the Luke verse says, and behold, a man full of leprosy, but upon seeing Jesus, he fell upon his face and requested him, saying, Lord, if you wish, I can be cleansed. And he stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I wish it be cleansed. And immediately the leprosy left him.
Yeah, but I don't understand how this is pausing that it was copied, because the scholarly consensus of the dating of these things, are they the same? Which came first?
Of which ones?
Yeah, according to the Gospels.
The scholarly consensus on the Gospels is that Mark was written first.
Yeah.
Mark was the cousin of Barnabas.
Yeah.
And about 95% of Mark is directly copied into Matthew and Luke. And Matthew and Luke make some of their own, we'll say, editorial changes to Mark. But what we don't find is any of those editorial changes copied between Matthew and Luke. which is one of the reasons why we know that they copied from Mark and not from each other.
But this is just like
What
a
we don't
presupposition.
find, no, it's not a presupposition. What we don't find are any of the editorial changes from Matthew and Luke in the book of Mark.
Yeah. So
And
could you
and
like
we also
demonstrate that?
have we also have like entire paragraphs copied directly in Greek from Matthew into or from Mark into Matthew and from Mark into Luke. Whereas what we don't find are any phrases copied like that from Luke into Mark or from Luke into Matthew or vice versa. So there's a thing in biblical academics called the Markan priority,
Yeah, I'm
and
familiar.
Markan priority is not really debated in biblical scholarship.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, as much as we could waste an hour debating Markan priority, fact of the matter is, you would just be going against the entire body of New Testament source criticism.
Yeah, I'm familiar with these objections, but it's literally just a presupposition because you're
Nope,
presupposing that. Yeah, you're presupposing that because they have similar narratives, even
nope,
though they're recording the same story. That
nope.
yeah. What do you mean? No, that's what you're
That
positing. No?
it's not a presupposition. Source criticism is a very particular field,
Okay.
and it is not based on presupposing anything.
Can you demonstrate how you concluded that? Can you
Can you read
demonstrate?
Greek?
I can bring a Greek speaker if you wish, but can you demonstrate how Luke copied Mark?
Yes, you can quite clearly just compare the Greek text. So, for example, there's a narrative in which Matthew copies directly from Mark. In Mark 2:26, we have a problematic passage from Mark, and
Wait
it
a quick.
includes, hold on. It says, in the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is unlawful for only priests to eat, and he gave some to his companions. This is a problematic passage that gets reiterated in Matthew, but not in Luke. And when it gets reiterated in Matthew, Matthew clears up the problem in Mark.
Yeah.
So when you read it in Matthew, he cuts out the name of Abiathar, the high priest, because as it turns out, Abiathar wasn't the high priest in 2 Samuel, where the story originated from. So
That's
what we
like an argument from
find,
silence.
it's not. So what we find is that when Matthew copies Mark and when Luke copies Mark,
Yeah.
they have a tendency to correct Mark. But what
Yeah.
we don't find are any inaccuracies in Luke and Matthew that get corrected by Mark. What
Yeah.
we also don't find, every story that is copied between Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're always expanded upon in Matthew and Luke. The narrative that is copied from Mark is always the shortest narrative. And in source criticism, it's almost universal that when something is copied, editorial notes are added. It's always an expansion of the text. Very rarely do they take the text and shrink it.
Yeah. You still haven't like. Okay. Thanks for teaching me on textual criticism. You still haven't demonstrated how you've like concluded and you're like affirmative on the fact that Luke copied from Mark. You're just saying because there's similarities, and then you're posing an argument from
I
silence.
didn't say anything about
Can I finish? Can I
similarities.
finish?
I don't know why
Yeah.
you keep saying I said that.
Can I finish? Yeah. You're that's what you're positing. You're positing that because they're consistent with each other, and then you're saying that because Luke doesn't say a name of a certain individual and Mark does, but it was a blunder that they were copying each other and he left the name out. That's just an argument from silence. There's no argument there. You're just presupposing that.
I'm actually not presupposing it.
You're not Oh, okay.
Yes,
can you give me a
because you can
formal
go
argument
to
for that?
Mark,
Yeah.
because you can go to Mark and you can see what he's referencing in 2 Samuel. And in 2 Samuel, it's clear that Mark just made a mistake. He got the wrong priest,
What's the Mark
which is
verse?
which is why it's Mark 2:26,
Mark 2:26.
which is why Matthew fixes it by cutting
Yeah.
out the name of the priest.
No, that's an argument from silence. You can't demonstrate the reason he left it out. You're presupposing why he left it out. You understand that these gospels were to different crowds, right? You're presupposing that.
Yes, I am presupposing the
Also, you
reason
are.
for
Thanks.
the change,
Yeah. Thanks.
but what we know for sure is that there is a change, and we can mark these changes. So, for example, when Matthew and Luke copy from Mark, they make changes, they make adjustments
Oh, GG's,
to
man.
Mark. But what we don't find, we never find an adjustment from Matthew in Luke. and we never find an adjustment from Luke in Matthew, which means they're adjusting a source text, and that source text is always Mark.
Yeah, you just agreed that you just conceded. You just agreed that your
Wait, can
argument
you
is a
wait? Can you
presupposition.
summarize? You didn't listen to any of what Justin just said. Could you summarize the thing that Justin said immediately before you started talking?
Wait,
Just
Justin,
now, like
Wait,
5 seconds ago. Wait, can you summarize what Justin said, or were you not listening?
wait, did Justin not just say that he agrees that his argument is a
No,
presupposition?
no. The thing that he said immediately after. Could you
No,
summarize what he said immediately after, or were you not listening?
I wasn't listening. Can you repeat
Gotcha.
it?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Justin, do you want to hit him with it again? Maybe
Oh,
try
yeah,
listening
repeat it.
this time.
Yes. When we find narratives that are in Matthew, Mark, and Luke,
Mm-hmm.
what we find is we've got a short narrative in Mark, and then in Luke and Matthew, those narratives typically get either corrected or expanded.
Oh.
But when we find the narrative
Yeah.
in Matthew, the version that Matthew tells does not appear in Luke. And when we find a narrative in Luke that is slightly different from Mark, that never shows up in Matthew. So we know that Matthew and Luke were not copying from each other because Matthew and Luke's editorial notes don't show up in each other's books.
Editorial notes.
Yes, for example, there are editorial notes where it gives clarification to Aramaic words. There are editorial notes that you'll find in the Gospels. And what you don't find is that Matthew and Luke share these editorial notes.
The Gospels are written in Aramaic.
No, Jesus spoke in Aramaic, and the Gospel authors had to explain the meaning of Aramaic words that were spoken by people in the story because the audiences didn't know Aramaic. But the editorial notes that you'll find in Matthew and Luke, those don't get copied between Matthew and Luke. They appear to be editorial notes on their source text, which was Mark.
Yeah, could you
And this
expand what you
is
mean by editorial
is
notes? Sorry.
yeah, when the person editing the story has to explain something in the story.
Oh, so expanding on a topic.
Yes, editorial notes.
So expanding on a topic is an editorial note. So if you give me a story and if I
Yes,
expand on it, I'm editing the narrative.
that's called editorial notation.
Okay, go ahead.
So what we don't find are editorial notes that happen in happen in Matthew that get copied into Luke. And we don't find Lucan editorial notes that show up in Matthew. They appear to not be copying from each other. But what we do have is that Mark doesn't have any of these editorial notes. And when Mark does include editorial notes that get copied, they get copied into both Matthew and Luke. So I understand that like it's inconvenient to accept the source criticism of the Gospels, but there is so much evidence for Markan priority that this just isn't a debatable topic in New Testament scholarship. And the fact that the people who read the Gospels want to reject it is baffling to me because even if you accept Markan priority, it doesn't make the stories untrue. It
Market
just
priority,
happens
meaning what?
it just happens to be that from a source criticism point of view, the only logical conclusion you can come to is that Matthew and Luke had to have copied from Mark.
Okay. Matthew and Luke must have copied from Mark. I still want to talk specifically about that Mark 22, verse 26 one, the initial one you brought. So yeah, sure, I've heard all your points, but it is an argument from silence, and you're presupposing that the reason that Luke left it out is because of the editorial note or whatever it is that you.
No, I don't
Can I
think you
finish?
understood the argument.
Okay, can I
So,
finish?
okay, yeah,
Mike,
maybe
please
like
finish. I
maybe
can't
like a way
finish.
to think about it. So imagine like we're taking like photocopies of something. So when you photocopy a thing, that there's like marks that appear. Now if it like passed down in like a chain, we would probably expect like Mark makes one photocopy, there's like this error, and then Luke would make the photocopy, and we would expect to see the same error there, and like maybe like a different thing, and
It's a
then
false
like
equivocation.
a third one, and then we would expect to see like a third error in like the photocopying process essentially.
That's
But
a false
it
equivocation.
sounds like, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's like the equivalent of like if we took a photocopy, and so we have like the original like Mark, and then Luke took a photocopy of Mark, as is indicated by like any like all the flaws are unique, and then like Matthew took a photocopy and then like all the flaws are unique. Is that kind of what it's like, or did that make
Yeah,
sense?
that's
It's like a
actually a
false
really good
equivocation.
explanation. And like a good example of this would be like, for example, let's assume that we've got an original photograph and we throw that photograph on a Xerox copy machine. And when we copied it the first time, it was slightly crooked on the copy machine.
Mhm.
So let's say we copied it a second time. When we copy it the second time, there was a smudge on the copy machine glass. Well, this is evidence that we've got
It's
two different
talking.
copies from an original source because the smudge on the glass doesn't show up in both copies, and the crooked copy doesn't show up in both of the copies either. The smudge shows up in one copy, and the crookedness shows up in another copy, and neither one of those things shows up in the original copy. So this is the same thing with source criticism. We can
That's
see
not
what appears to be a source, and
the false
there's
equivocation fallacy.
slight changes from the source, and then there are other slight changes from the source,
The false
and
equivocation.
neither one of those two sets of changes actually shows up in the other copy.
That's a false equivocation fallacy because you're
It's not.
presupposing. Yeah, you're presupposing that that the rest of the Gospels got all of their narrative from Mark. So it is a false equivocation.
It's not.
Wait,
It's not.
that's not a presupposition. That's what the evidence indicates.
The evidence indicates. So the
Yes.
consensus within the scholars is that Matthew, Luke, and John got all of their information from Mark.
No, that
No.
Matthew and Luke.
Sorry, not John. Only Matthew and Luke.
No, what scholarship is saying is that Mark was written first,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
Matthew and Luke copied most of Mark, and
Is
then
that
they
the scholarly
added,
consensus?
yes, and then they added their own material. So there's about 25% of Matthew and Luke that are original to Matthew and Luke, and then there's about 30 to 35% of Matthew and Luke that are copied from Mark. John is on his own. John did his own thing.
Okay, yeah. So once again, you're presupposing. Your argument is a presupposition because you haven't demonstrated
It's
how
not. So
you
you're
haven't
more than
demonstrated
welcome.
anything.
You're more than welcome to take it up with biblical scholarship, and you can be the one to debunk Mark and priority if you think you can do it.
Yeah, but you haven't
Because
demonstrated an argument. You're just like positing a lot of assertions. That's what
I'm
you're
not.
doing.
So
wait,
I'm
so
saying that
what
biblical
Justin
scholarship
did.
didn't come to these
Yeah,
conclusions
let
by
Ian explain. Let
accident.
Ian explain.
Well, yeah,
They
well, I
didn't
mean,
come
like
to
what
these
Justin
conclusions
did is just
in
give like
vacuum.
hella evidence. Like he just provided, like this would be like if we're at like a murder case, and Justin just demonstrated to you that like all the fingerprints were like all over the weapon, that the person was in the scene of the crime, that they had a motive, that they had like all of this stuff. Justin just gave you like a ton of evidence. Like there's no way to deductively prove that. That's not what Justin's trying to do. What Justin is
Oh, it's
trying
an
to do
inductive
is to
argument.
say that yeah, it's inductive. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think? Wait, I mean, all arguments are going to at some level rely on senses which are inductive. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fact that your senses are reliable, that's inductive.
Are inductive arguments reliable? Are they valid?
They can. They. It depends on the strength of the evidence. The reliability is proportional to the strength of the evidence.
Yeah, but okay, but according to law, like the logicians, and according to textbooks on logic, would inductive arguments be valid?
Are they valid?
Yeah.
So, in the philosophical, so in like a colloquial sense, they're valid, but in like a strict logician sense,
Yeah.
where valid means like following a specific structure. I mean, I could assemble like an argument of this sort, with the conclusion that Markan priority is, like almost certainly true, if that's what you're interested in.
No, the question. Wait, give me a second. I got.
I don't understand why he's fighting so hard against Mark and priority. I don't
I'm
think
back.
it's like a smoking gun
Wait, 1 second.
for his
That's-
position.
1 second. That's not what I'm arguing against, but I just want to, like, inductive arguments, they're not valid. You know that, right? Like,
So I could assemble this into like a valid argument if you really want me to. If you want me to, if you're dying for like the modus ponens structure, I'd be happy to give it to you.
no, that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking you, according to logicians, philosophically, are inductive arguments valid? It's not even a loaded question.
Well, wait, but this is just like a conflation of two terms.
Okay, could you demonstrate how it's a
Yeah,
conflation?
so it's just like a difference in sense that typically when we say like this argument is valid in like a colloquial sense, we just mean like, well, is this argument like good? Is it true? Like, of course, it doesn't follow like the formal structure,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that the conclusion isn't like highly probable.
Yeah, so would an inductive argument be as probable as a deductive argument philosophically?
If the premises of the deductive argument are true, then you would prioritize the deductive argument.
Oh, why is that?
However, you haven't made a deductive argument against Markan priority.
That's
So
not
insofar as the
that's
only
a straw man.
the
That's
only
not what I'm
wait, hold
arguing
on.
against.
The only argument that's been presented is Justin's like strong inductive case for Markan priority. So do you have a deductive argument against Markan priority?
So we completely deviated. I want to specifically stick on the fact that you said inductive arguments are valid.
No, I didn't say. I said that in like some sense of the word they are, but in like a
Yeah,
strict
in which
logical sense,
sense?
they don't follow like the formal structure, of course.
Okay, so can you just like agree that inductive arguments are not valid? Or do you want to
Because you're trying to conflate on terms, so
I'm
no.
not completing terms. I can bring you like logicians.
Wait. No,
philosophers.
because so when we say valid colloquially, which is how when I say valid, that's going to be interpreted in like the strict philosophical definition. Let's actually put the word valid aside and just use the definitions of these terms. Inductive arguments do not follow a modus ponens structure. That's not what
Yes.
they're trying to do. But what they do is provide strong evidence. For example, if you think like the sun's going to rise tomorrow, there's not a deductive argument for the sun rising, but what you do have is evidence. It's an evidentiary case.
Oh my god. It's literally okay. You're conflating what I'm asking you. I'm just asking you generally, like according to logicians,
This is a
according to
bad faith
textbook.
wait, this is like a super bad faith question. Like an extraordinarily bad faith question. And
Bad
you know that
faith.
it's a bad faith
What do you
question.
mean bad? I'm just telling you how like
Because
they
wait.
yeah.
So inductive arguments are cogent, but they're cogent, but they're not valid. But
Oh,
just
thanks.
because they're not valid, they're still likely.
Yeah, no, I can agree
They don't.
that.
They just don't follow like the valid formal structure. But I mean, if you really wanted to, I could throw it into like a modus ponens structure. Just if all the evidence Justin said is true, then it's very probable that Markan priority is true. All the evidence that Justin gave you is true. Therefore, it's very likely that Markan priority is true.
Oh, so you can pose a deductive argument concluding that. Wait, by the way, deconstructing,
Yeah,
deconstruction,
deconstruction zone. Yeah.
deconstruction zone. Could you tell me what your definition of Markan priority would be?
Yeah, simply put, is that Mark obviously was written either contemporaneously to Matthew and Luke, or it was written before Matthew and Luke, which is why Matthew and Luke are able to copy from Mark. And I at this point, I forget why Mark and priority even came up, but I
Oh, so it
suspect,
came
It's
up
because of
because he
the
wanted to
apparent,
pivot away
the
from the
quote unquote contradiction.
contradictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. Oh, well, this has nothing to do with contradictions. But
Yep.
that being said, the reason why it's important for the eyewitness claim is because Mark lived 30 years after Jesus, and it would be completely unexpected for Matthew and Luke to be eyewitnesses if they copied from Mark, who lived 30
Matthew
years
and
after
Luke.
Jesus, because Mark was the cousin of Barnabas.
Wait, who said Luke was an eyewitness?
Oh, Luke's definitely not an eyewitness. That's just I'm wrapping the gospel authors up into one category as witnesses.
Okay, but yeah, I don't understand. So wait, the entire Markan priority thesis is that due to the fact that Mark has been dated earlier than the other gospels, that the narratives from the other gospels stem from Mark, right?
No, what we're suggesting is that Matthew and Luke was written either shortly after Mark or roughly contemporaneously with Mark, but not before Mark.
Oh,
But
that's it.
if that's yeah, so, that's all
Oh
I'm
yeah,
saying.
no, yeah, I would agree with that. That's according, yeah, my church. I'll agree with that. I don't mind.
Right. And so all we're suggesting is that whatever material is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke,
hmm
they're not the authors are not eyewitnesses to the events. They're recording somebody else's stories.
Okay, so if we're following the Matthew and Luke narrative, would there be slight differentiation, or would it be a major differentiation between the Markan narrative?
There are major differences in certain places. So, for example, when we get to like what Ian brought up, like the Passover, there seems to be some confusion as to what time he was crucified. One gospel says it was 9 o'clock in the morning. Another gospel says he was still standing in front of Pilate at noon.
hmm
So he wasn't even crucified yet at noon. So there are definitely differences.
Yeah, no, according to the entire like narrative of the gospel in general, would there be major differences or would there be minor differences?
Well, I think there's major differences, and not just between the gospels. So, for
Hmm.
example, if you take the theology of the New Testament, I think the theology of the New Testament is completely contradictory to the predictions made by the prophets in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, it says in both Ezekiel and in Isaiah
Hmm.
that the Gentiles who are grafted into Israel to
Hmm.
participate in the covenant of Israel, that all of them will be required to be circumcised. Yet Paul goes on and on about how the Gentiles should not be circumcised.
Um, what are you referring to? Like Corinthians? What are you referring to?
Well, it's in about 4 different writings of Paul about how the Gentiles shouldn't be circumcised.
Yeah, but I
It's
want to
in
know the exact book because there's the context I'm thinking of probably follows with them.
Well, I don't think there's any context that's helpful for you. They're Gentiles, and Paul says because of that, they shouldn't be circumcised.
Yeah, because of
Because
course
by taking on circumcision, they'd be taking on the whole of the law.
the Pauline epistles were sent to certain groups. So I want to know which one you're specifically talking about.
Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Titus
In all of
all
them, he talks
discuss
about them
Yes, circumcision is mentioned in all of those letters.
on how you shouldn't be circumcised. On how you shouldn't be circumcised, or on how it's
On
not a
how you
requirement.
should not be circumcised.
Mm. Could you bring me a verse so we can just converse about it?
Yeah, let's go to Galatians.
Yeah.
Galatians 5:6. For in Jesus Christ, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything. The only thing that counts is faith working through love.
Galatians 5:6. You said.
Yep.
Okay. Galatians. That's like 5:6. For in Jesus Christ neither circumcision avails nor uncircumcision, but faith which works by love. Yeah. Are you familiar with the circumstances of the letters to the Galatians?
I'm quite familiar with all of the Pauline epistles, and
Yeah.
which
With
is
that.
why I know that in all of the Pauline epistles,
Mhm.
he tells the Gentiles that they should not be getting circumcised.
Oh no, like the Galatians, like who were they?
The Galatians was a church near Asia Minor.
What was the problem with them?
There's not one single problem with the Galatian church, so I'm going to need to be a little more specific.
Yeah, what was the major problem with the Galatians?
Again, there's not one major problem with the Galatian church, so I need you to be specific with your question.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure the Galatians were Judaizers of Christianity, so they were inputting a lot of the Jewish law into Christianity. That's the reason he sent it
That
to there.
that was true of nearly all of Paul's churches. The
Uh,
Judaizers were Paul's greatest opponent in his entire ministry.
I agree, but specifically Galatians is that's like the entire narrative. Remember,
It's not.
Galatians, the majority of the narrative of Galatians isn't like talking about Judaizing Christians.
Nope.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
But it's also true that Paul mentioned circumcision on many occasions. I would be incredibly surprised that this is not just a readily accepted fact. That this is a part of the crux of Pauline theology that you should not be taking on the burden of the Jewish law by getting circumcised.
Galatians 5 verse 6. Let's see. Christ is become of no effect unto you, whosoever of you are justified by the law, you are fallen from grace. For we through the Spirit, for in Jesus Christ neither circumcision avails anything nor. Wait, what was the argument? What was the argument against Galatians 5:6 again?
My argument is quite simple. Paul says over and over again that circumcision is of no use, that the Gentiles shouldn't be getting circumcised, and that they're condemning themselves by getting circumcised. But in the Old Testament, in both Ezekiel and in Isaiah, during the Messianic age, it says that the Gentiles that join themselves to Yahweh will be circumcised.
Let me see. I don't specifically. I don't think that's what this verse is referring to. Give me a second.
Romans 2 is very clear on this. says circumcision indeed is of value only if you obey the law, but if you are a transgressor of the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. So if the uncircumcised keep the requirements of the law, will not their uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? Then the physically uncircumcised person who keeps the law will judge you, who though having written code and circumcision are transgressors of the law. For a person is not a Jew who is one who is outwardly, nor is one circumcised through external and physical. So Paul makes the case that you are not needing circumcision. What you need is faith.
Okay.
But this contradicts what the Old Testament prophets say.
Oh, I see your argument now. Finally, so according to the Old Testament prophets, circumcision is needed, but according to the New Testament, it's not needed.
That's literally what I've been saying for 10 minutes.
Okay, so is the New Testament a continuation or a reformation of the Old Testament law?
It's a contradiction of the Old Testament.
That's not what I asked you. Is it a continuation or a reformation?
Neither.
Okay, so then, so in the New Testament, are there many things, are there many actions done by Christ that are reforming or making new or objecting of the Old Testament laws?
Yes, which is why the Jews believed that he was committing blasphemy and had him executed, because he should have bothered to read his Old Testament, but he didn't.
Yeah, but that's not that's not what I'm asking you though.
What I'm trying to demonstrate to you is that the New Testament and the Old Testament cannot agree on what is appropriate theology and behavior. And a prime example of that is circumcision and the keeping of the law of Moses.
Yeah, talking about circumcision specifically, you're you're misinterpreting the narrative of the New Testament in conjunction to the Old Testament.
I'm actually not. Does Paul teach that the Gentiles don't need circumcised?
The commentaries are they say otherwise.
Who? Name one commentary that says Paul was of the opinion that the Gentiles should be
Like an
circumcised.
exact word fallacy. That's not what I was saying. Oh my god, fallacy machine, man. Let me see the commentary in a second. Let me see. Let's go to. Let's see. Okay, can we go to Romans 2:28? 2:28.
Wait.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
just read it.
Wait, what did it read?
Yeah, it says, for a person who is not a Jew, who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision something external and physical. Rather, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart by the Spirit, not the written code.
Okay, so
So
when St. Paul says circumcision is that of the heart, what does this mean?
he's referring to the letter of Jeremiah, where it says that people need to be circumcised in the heart and in the flesh. To be
Jeremiah.
circumcised in the heart means that you have a spiritual renewal, which is why Paul reiterates the Old Testament prophets, saying that you need circumcision of the heart, of the spirit, but you don't need circumcision of the flesh.
Are you referring to Jeremiah 4:4?
There's a couple of them in Jeremiah. There's two different sections in Jeremiah that talk about it, and it also shows up in other prophets.
Yeah, so, and according to St. Paul here, when he says, and circumcision is that of the heart, would that be a contradiction according to the Old Testament, where you had to be physically? Actually, now the question I suppose to you would be, when it's referring to the circumcision of the heart, is this a physical circumcision, like in the way that we know? Or then
Not the circumcision of the heart. The circumcision of the flesh is a physical circumcision. And that's what Paul is telling them they don't need. You don't need the circumcision of the flesh.
In verse 28, it reads, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart. Is he
That's right.
Is he positing that specifically, or is he generally saying that circumcision is that of the heart?
Paul is saying that you don't need external circumcision. You only need the internal circumcision, which is circumcision of the heart.
Okay, so according to this narrative, it's contradicting the Old Testament.
Yes, because the Old Testament says that you need both. You need circumcision of the heart and the flesh.
And does Paul negate both propositions?
Paul negates one of those propositions. He says you only need the circumcision of the heart.
Would that be a contradiction then?
That would be a theological contradiction.
Yeah, but by definition, that would be a contradiction.
That's what I just said. It'd be a theological contradiction. Same with eating meat sacrificed to idols. Paul says you can eat meat sacrificed to idols. You're at liberty to do so. And the other disciples and Jesus say you can't do it.
Okay, sticking on this though, so what would you say a theological contradiction would be?
A theological contradiction is when people are making theological claims that can't both be simultaneously true.
Like mutual exclusivity?
Yes, like if the prophet says that during the Messianic age, everybody is required to be circumcised in the heart and the flesh, and then the Messianic age happens, and God's mouthpiece says that you don't need to be circumcised
Thinker,
in the
thank you
flesh.
so much. Big W Thinker in the comment section. Appreciate that.
God's mouthpiece.
Do you think that Paul wrote gospel? Do you think that, wrote scripture?
No, like I didn't know what you meant by that, that's why I asked.
Well, if Paul is speaking for God, then we would expect that what Paul says is not contradictory to what the prophets say.
Yeah, it won't be contradictory, because then would you be holding to the position that every time the Messiah, being Jesus, fulfills the Old Testament law, would his fulfillment be a contradiction because he's negating the proposition of the Old Testament?
Well, he didn't fulfill the Old Testament laws.
He didn't. So
laws are to be followed, not fulfilled. Do you mean the prophets?
Yeah, the prophecies.
But he didn't fulfill any prophecies.
Any of them? That's a
None of
negation
them.
of everything. Perfect. So yeah, according to any of the Messianic prophecies, he didn't fulfill any of them.
Not one.
Okay. So
in fact, I'll read you a damning one right now if you want to hear it.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Jeremiah 33 says the days are surely coming.
70 to 18,
33.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
The days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise that I made to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch to spring up for David, and he will execute justice and righteousness in the land. In those days, Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will live in safety. And this is the name by which it will be called, the Lord is our righteousness. Now listen to this last section. For thus saith the Lord, David will never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel, and the Levitical priests will never lack a man in my presence to offer burnt offerings, to make grain offerings, and to make sacrifices for all time. So none of those things came true. Jesus never sat on the throne. There's not a king on the throne continually. And there are not Levitical priests in the temple giving grain offerings.
Yeah, so this just shows you're not familiar with the actual biblical narrative, because
I'm actually quite familiar. I have 2 degrees in biblical studies, which is why I know he didn't fulfill any prophecies.
He doesn't fulfill any prophecies? Yeah, so according to Jeremiah 33, is the biblical narrative saying that according to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11 to 12, that Christ, being the high priest of all good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats of calves, but by his own blood, he entered and once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Is this now referring to the repeated sacrifices and the Eucharist being the sacrifice of Christ?
No, because if he bothered to read the book of Hebrews, he would recognize that it says that Jesus is of a different priesthood, not the Levitical priesthood. And they try to make excuses for why the priesthood of Jesus is greater than the priesthood of the Levites. But the Old Testament in Jeremiah and Ezekiel says that when the Messiah comes, it will be the Levitical priesthood offering sacrifices, and it doesn't say a singular priest, multiple priests.
Yeah, according to Hebrews chapter 7 verse 22, it reads, by so much was Jesus made surely a better covenant, and they truly were many priests, because they were not allowed to continue by reason of death. But
that's right,
because he was continuing.
This is what we call a contradiction.
Yeah,
because the Old Testament doesn't say that the Levitical priesthood is getting replaced. It says that the Levitical priesthood will be serving forever.
Yeah, we agree with that.
In the temple.
We
But
agree with that.
according to the book of Hebrews, the Levitical priesthood is replaced by the order of Melchizedek, which Jesus is theoretically in the line of.
We agree that we agree with Jeremiah 33. It's just like a misinterpretation because you're
You
positing
don't.
that. Yeah, we agree with it. You're positing that because Jesus becomes the eternal priest, that this is a
He's
negation of the
not, though.
proposition.
Kelvin, thanks so much for the $6.66 on Cash App. Hail Kelvin, hail 666, hail Satan. Big W Kelvin in the comment section. So sorry. Please keep going.
So the
Okay.
Levitical priests are a specific order of priests. They are actual priests on the earth who make actual sacrifices and offerings in an actual temple where God says his presence will be.
So yeah, according to the commentary on this verse reads, so would you agree that, let me see, verse 18, would you agree that and to burn grain offerings is the sacrifice being continued, like is it continuous?
It should be, according to Jeremiah and according to Ezekiel, there should be everlasting grain offerings, animal offerings. In fact, in the book of Ezekiel, it specifies which animals are going to be offered and how many of them.
Yeah, so if I was to bring a verse saying that Christ is the eternal sacrifice for all sacrifices, would this be sufficient or no? Or would it be another
No,
contradiction?
that would be meaningless
It would be
because
meaningless.
the prophets don't say that a human being is going to come
He has an
and
argument
be
from
the
silence.
final. No, the prophets tell you that there will be Levitical priests giving continual sacrifices. A grain offering is a specific sacrifice.
That's an
A
argument from
burnt
silence.
a burnt offering is a specific sacrifice.
Yeah.
So Jesus was not a burnt sacrifice and he was not a grain sacrifice.
Yeah, so if I was to bring you a verse saying that Jesus will cover all sacrifices, all being including everything, would this be sufficient?
No, that would be a contradiction because
Okay, yeah,
Jesus
thank you.
cannot be a grain offering. Jesus cannot be a burnt offering.
Okay, you're missing what I'm telling you here, man. I'm saying that if there's a verse saying that Jesus is the continuous sacrifice for all ages, for all sacrifices, would this not be
Yes,
sufficient?
that
Or
would be a contradiction because the prophets don't say that. The
is
prophets
this
say that the Levitical priests, which are actual human beings on the earth, will be giving sacrifices and offerings. And those sacrifices are specific types of sacrifices. One of them is an animal sacrifice, and one of them is a grain sacrifice.
Yeah, I don't think you're like getting what I'm saying here. If in the verse, I'll find it's like in Hebrews where it says that Christ will cover and be the continuous for all sacrifices, be the continuous sacrifice. This
Is
won't cover
Jesus a
everything.
Levitical priest?
So we're talking about the sacrifices
Is
specifically.
Jesus a Levitical priest?
Are we talking about the sacrifices or the Levitical priesthood?
Both. You need the Levitical priesthood to give the sacrifices.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk about the sacrifices specifically because according to the commentary on this, you can clearly see, and according to the church fathers, that the Eucharist is the completion of the
But
ancient
it's not.
sacrifices.
What you're
But it's
doing
not.
is you're saying, I don't like what Jeremiah says, and I'm going to spiritualize it.
No, that's not what I'm saying at
But
all.
over and over again in the prophets, we have an actual prophecy during the Messianic age that includes physical priests on the actual earth giving sacrifices of actual animals and actual grain.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying according to the church, according to the commentaries, according to Saint Hippolytus.
I don't care what your church says.
Oh,
I
so
don't
you're
care
doing an
what your
internal critique,
commentary
but you don't care.
says.
You're doing an internal critique of the Bible, but you don't care, right?
I'm doing an internal critique of Christianity, and as it
No,
turns
it's
out,
is this not
your
textual
church
criticism?
fathers are not the final authority.
Is this not textual
So the
criticism?
final authority is what the book says.
No, I'm not. I'm not sola scriptura. Maybe you debate Protestants. I'm not a Protestant.
Well, you got a big problem if you think that the church fathers are a final authority, because the church fathers couldn't agree either.
I'm not a Protestant, man. I take what the church fathers say.
Well, I don't.
I don't,
Why do I care what the church fathers say?
because you're critiquing the Christian belief. You're doing an internal critique. It's textual criticism. So you're going to follow by what I, as an Eastern Orthodox Christian,
I don't
believe in.
follow what the church fathers say. I'm doing an
Oh my goodness.
internal critique on what the Bible says.
Yes, and the Bible needs its interpreters, as Paul says.
No, it doesn't.
It so oh
I don't need anybody to tell me what words mean on a page. I know
Yeah,
what a Levitical priesthood.
not
I
yeah.
know what a grain offering is. I
That's
know
a
what a burnt
Protestant.
offering is.
Yeah, I'm not a Protestant, so you're misrepresenting my
I'm not
position.
telling you that you're a Protestant. I'm
No,
telling you
that's
that
what you're
I know what
insinuating.
words mean,
That's what
and
you're insinuating.
there's no amount of church father commentary that's going to change the meaning of the word Levitical priest.
That's what you're insinuating. You're rejecting the church
I'm
fathers,
not.
right? Are you rejecting the church fathers?
I'm saying that the church fathers have only as much authority to translate words as I do.
No, that's not the case.
It is the case.
Yeah, I'm not yeah, I'm not a Protestant. I don't follow that.
It would be the case because in order for your church fathers to have any authority, you would need to first demonstrate that the Bible is true, and you can't do that.
Oh,
So
so
you're putting the
now we're
cart
going
before
further
the
back, right?
horse.
Yeah, now we're going further back. But yeah,
That's how this works.
you're
Your
not
church fathers have absolutely no authority.
yeah, you're negating the reliability and the authority
There's no
of the church
reliability.
fathers. Thanks. You're negating their authority, and you have no argument for that. You're
Why
just saying
why
you're,
why
yeah.
should they have authority?
Your actual objection was no because
Why should the church fathers have any authority?
do you mean why should they have any authority?
Why do I care what they say?
Because that's you're doing an internal critique. What do you mean?
I'm asking you, why should I grant authority to the church fathers?
Because you are doing an internal critique, and my
An
church
internal
asking.
an internal critique of the Bible. So you need to establish their
Okay,
authority.
you do okay. He's doing an internal critique of the Bible, and according to the Bible, we have commentaries of the Bible, right? According to me, right? According to my beliefs, I
Yeah,
take the
but we
church
have the
fathers
same
as
thing for the
interpretation.
Jewish Old Testament. I could just say that you have to accept my view because I've read the Jewish rabbis, and the Jewish rabbis say that
Am
it
I a
should be
Jew?
wait,
Am I a Jew? Are you talking to a
you're
Jewish
not,
man? Are
but
you
I'm
talking to a
trying to
Jewish
help
man?
you to understand that your particular commentaries mean nothing until
Of
you can
course you do. If
demonstrate why they should be
I've
authoritative.
lost.
I have no reason to believe that they are authoritative.
Okay, so let's get this straight. You're doing an internal critique on the Bible, right?
Yes, yeah,
And
that's why we're reading the Bible.
you're talking to me, right? I'm the
I'm
person.
talking to you. Yeah.
Yes, and according to my beliefs, do I take the church fathers as authoritative?
Yes, and part of my
Thank you.
internal critique is that the church fathers are not authoritative because the only authority that they would have is if the Bible was true. So until you can demonstrate that the Bible is true, they don't have any authority.
Okay, so you're deviating now. You're going back to epistemology to show how a text would be deemed as reliable.
Yes, and I can show you how the text is unreliable. We didn't even get to the apparent or the real like historical contradictions or the scientific contradictions or where the stories just flat out disagree on details like where Josiah died. One text says he died in Jerusalem, the other says he died in Megiddo. These are just flat out contradictory texts that cannot be resolved.
Yeah.
I can find 100 places in the Bible that's not reliable. I have no reason to believe your claim that it is reliable.
Okay, so can you give me the criteria to deem a text as reliable?
Yes, if it contains contradictions, I would call that unreliable.
That's the criteria to deem a text as reliable. Ian, would you
If I
agree with
gave
that?
you a book and I said this book is true and reliable and you found 100 contradiction in it, would you believe that it's reliable?
There'd be there's not a singular criteria to deem a text as reliable.
Well, I'd
Okay,
say
then
probably like internally consistent and also in line with reality.
if there's not
In
a
line with
measuring
reality,
stick,
according
if
to
there's
who is
not a
that?
Yeah, in
measuring
line with like empirical reality. Like if your
According
book
to who
opens,
is?
well, yeah, like if your book opens like first God made the sky red and he never changed it, then that would be out of line with reality.
Wait, do you hold to empiricism?
I'm not gonna let you pivot away from this. I'm agnostic on epistemology.
Yeah, it's also true
You're
that
agnostic on
Wait,
epistemology.
you're so desperate to pivot.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
he's trying
scrambling.
hard.
You're clawing hard to get away
wait,
from the
I literally
Bible
asked
because you've gotten
deconstruction. I
washed
told
by
him.
Justin.
Yeah, I asked
So
Justin if he wants to go to epistemology, and he said yes. And your epistemology is cooked.
I didn't say anything about that. So what
You
I'm
didn't?
telling you is that if you're saying that there's no definition of reliable, then you also
When
can't
did I
make the
say that?
claim.
That's
You
a
literally just you literally
when did
just
I
said
say
it
that? I
when
said
I
there's
said,
multiple criteria to deem a text as reliable. When did I negate that?
well, give me your criteria. How do I know if a text is reliable?
Oh, you want me to give it?
Yeah, I'd love to hear
Oh,
it.
yeah. So to deem a text as reliable, like I initially posed to Ian, I said the external internal corroboration, internal corroboration, external attestation, internal consistency and the historicity of the book. That's just a
Right.
few.
How much consistency does a book need before we call it reliable? What percentage of the book needs to be true?
Type of question is that? What do you mean, like
Well,
50.1?
reliability is an ambiguous term. If 10% of the book is unreliable, is the book still reliable?
What type of? That's okay. I'm not gonna. Yeah. So to deem a text is reliable. What's the definition of reliable?
We're
That's what
asking
I'm
you.
asking you, because
Yeah.
I'm
So
saying that it's not reliable based on the fact that I can find errors and contradictions in it, and you're saying it is
yeah.
reliable. So, in order to settle the debate, we need to understand what the word reliable even means.
Yeah. So for something to be reliable, would there need to be multiple negations of the irreliability?
Yes, there would, and I've got dozens of them.
No negations of oh, thank you. So you have dozens of negations of irreliability.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, man. I don't think you hear what I said, but yeah. So another one would be the historicity of the text.
Wait,
It's
wait.
not
Let's.
historically reliable.
Pardon?
It's not historically reliable either.
Okay, so if I was to bring a lot of, so are you familiar with what is this? I may be quoting wrong. Acts 16:19 or 16:9, where Luke talks about the expulsion of the Jews from Rome. Can you bring me another source from this time that records this event?
Oh yeah, there's multiple incursions with Rome in which some of the Jews were expelled.
Can you bring me one?
But
I'll wait.
but that's also irrelevant because we're talking about whether or not a text is internally and externally consistent.
No, we're
And that's
talking
why I
about the
asked
criteria
you.
to deem a text as reliable
That's
epistemically. One of
why
them is the
I
historicity.
asked you
Okay.
what percentage of a text needs to be reliable before
Yeah.
we say it's reliable. Because just because you can find a couple things in the book that is true doesn't make it all true.
Yeah, you just said we're conversing about what the criteria to deem a text as reliable is, and you agreed on it will obviously need to have the valid historical context, right?
Right. And I'm asking you how much of the book needs to be true before it's reliable.
50.1%.
What?
That's insane.
Would
Okay, so
What?
when
50.1
are
be
you going to
affirmative or
become
negative?
Muslim?
Would
When are
50
you becoming Muslim?
would 50.1 be negative or affirmative?
Huh?
Would 50.1 be negative or affirmative?
Bro's ready to base his whole life on
Wait, Ian, can you answer the
51%.
question?
What?
Ian, can you answer the
Yeah,
question?
you're. It's as low as 50%. If
Wait,
it's
Ian,
like
can you answer the
95%, I'm probably fucking
Ian,
out
can
of
you answer the
there.
question? Can you answer the question and stop like yapping? If
What, you think 50%? So 50% of your book could be lies and gibberish,
Wait, can
and
you
you
answer
would
the
think
question?
it's true.
Can you
So
answer
wait,
the
it's
question?
possible that God doesn't even exist.
Can you answer the question?
It's possible that like all the sections about God
Can you, like,
aren't
answer the
true,
question,
and you would still believe that the book
Can you
is
please answer the
reliable.
question? It's
That's
bad rhetoric, man.
insane.
It's terrible logos rhetoric. Can you
Wait,
answer the
oh
It
my
always
God,
gets
you're hitting the
embarrassing once you
Discord
start reading the
rhetoric.
Bible.
This is
Oh
terrible
my
rhetoric, man. Can you
God,
answer the
you're
question, please?
scampering. I'm not
Okay.
gonna fall for this trick.
Can you answer the question? Okay, thank you. So
Wait, you
so you're not gonna let me speak,
so
right?
you would believe a
This is
book that's
terrible rhetoric,
50
man.
wait, I just want to be you can call it terrible rhetoric. You're getting boiled.
Yeah,
You would believe a
once
book
again,
that's
terrible logos
50%
rhetoric, man.
lies.
Terrible logos rhetoric.
50% of your book could be like
Can
utter
I ask you the
lies,
question, or are you gonna
and you
keep
would
talking?
still believe it.
Go ahead. I'll mute.
50%? Yeah, what's your question? Go for it.
Oh, you're done?
Yeah.
Okay. So so I was gonna ask you 50.1, would this be negative or affirmative?
What do you mean by negative or affirmative?
Would this be more on the affirmative side or on the negative side?
What do you mean by negative and
Oh my
affirmative?
goodness, okay.
Can I get a
So
definition of the terms that you're asking me?
mathematically, if something is 1.5, would it be closer to 2 or closer to 1?
Would it Matt if it's 1.5, would it be closer to 2 or closer to 1?
Yeah.
It's
It's directly in the middle.
equidistant.
Oh my god. Wait, so mathematically, 1.5 is closer to 2 as is closer to 1?
It's
It's
in the middle
identical.
of them.
Are you actually serious, man? Did you go
Am
to,
I mishearing the question or something?
did you go to
I think
math class?
Orphan's
That
very
1.5
confused.
is in between
Did you
2
go to
and-
math class? In mathematics,
I have a
1.5 is
mathematics
closer,
degree.
in mathematics, 1.5 is closer to 2 than closer to 1. What are you talking about?
It's not.
It's not. It's point. Wait, so is point five equal to 0.5? I literally have a bachelor's of science
my
in
goodness.
mathematics. Let's run it.
Okay, wait,
Wait,
Ian.
wait, hold on.
So
I'm not
in
gonna let you pick away
mathematics,
from this. This is fun.
when your teacher taught you,
This
right,
is embarrassing.
1.5 is
Let's do
1.5
it.
is 1 point is
1.5
You're
is
hyperventilating.
1.5 is exactly halfway between 1 and 2.
Okay, look, and while counting, maybe I didn't ask you like
Wait, what do you mean? What, you don't count 1.52? What?
yeah, I'm saying so if you're to count in 0.5s as well, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3.
What? Then it's still equidistant.
Okay, so look, wait. So when you're counting 1.5, is it closer to 2 or closer to 1? Like when you're counting.
Okay.
When you're counting,
so
when you're rounding it up, can you just ask me?
maybe when you're rounding it up.
Yeah.
When you're
We're not
rounding it up.
rounding.
You're
When
not
you're rounding up
Is the
1.5, is 1.5 closer to 1 or 2?
Yeah, that's the question I ask you. What is it?
That's not you've malformed the question. When you're
Okay.
rounding it up,
Yeah.
if you round it up, 1.5 rounds up to 2 if you're rounding up to
Okay.
the nearest whole number,
So
but
the
it's not
initial-
closer. It's not closer to 2 than it is
Wait,
to
do you
1.
know why, Ortho? Do you know why you round up when you have like a value like 1.5? Do you know why?
Nah, I forgot.
Okay, because usually, like, let's say you're measuring something,
Mhm.
even any degree higher than 0.5, right? Whether it be immeasurable to us to our instruments, would make that value closer to 2. But usually we can't, the infinitesimal differences we can't measure, but if there is, it'd be closer to 2. That's
Okay.
why you round to up, right? But it's not because 0.5 is closer to 2 or it's nothing to do with that.
Okay, I'll ask you the question.
Wait,
maybe.
wait, hold on. I got some math that we gotta go through first because it would be
wait,
too
Danny.
bad. So wait, do you agree with the math that's on the board that 1 minus 1.5, the absolute value is 0.5, and that 2 minus 1.5, the absolute value is
posited
0.5?
I was talking about rounding up. I never posited that.
Oh no, wait, you never said rounding up until way later in the conversation.
that's a
Wait, so
strong
no, that's like literally everyone heard it. You asked me if it's closer to 1 or 2.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask
That's a
another question?
huge goalpost shove over
If in
here.
the goalpost, yeah. Danny, can I ask you the question? So like holding to this rounding up thing, right? Would 50.1 would it round up to 100 or round up to 0?
50.1, if you were to round to the
Well, if you're stipulating rounding up,
yeah, you would round up. If you had a round from 50 to 0 or 50 to 100, if there's 0.1, and if it's plus, you're adding 0.1, then you round to 100. But just so, but that's not the same thing as saying that 0.5 is closer to 1 or 50 is closer to 100 than 0.
Okay. So Danny, according to the according to deem a text is reliable, right? Part of this criteria would be internal consistency, corroboration, and like the historicity of the text, right?
This is why I requested. First of all, when a text is reliable or not is actually, somewhat vague because people have different priors. And so to get like a strict set of criteria for reliable and unreliable text, the Bible can be reliable in some areas and not others, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that as a Christian, presumably you're some kind of Catholic or Orthodox, you would say that if there are errors of historical errors or logical contradictions, right, that seems to crumble the whole, the faith, that your denomination. So we can just set that as our standard.
Okay, then what would be sufficient reason to deem a text as reliable, like a theological text, like Bible, Quran, or anything?
But look, if the purpose of asking that question is to be able to proceed with the criteria of reliability, but we can use your criteria for unreliability of the Bible or reliability of the Bible, because your criteria is a kind of infallibility, right?
I just want to see what your interpretation of it would be.
How would that progress the conversation?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Okay, well, to me, the reliability of a text, it just depends on the kind of information, the kind of text, when it was written, who writes it. There are too many factors for me to just give universal criteria for all text. Okay. So I'm not going to have a very strict universal criteria. It really depends. I have criteria for ancient text. That criteria might be very different than the criteria for a scientific paper. Okay. So, I think that we can just work with your standards, and your standards is that the Bible has multiple contradictions. You're probably not going to be a Christian.
Okay, so according to a theological text, what would it be? Like, what would the main three be? Let me ask.
Again, there's theological text all spread out all throughout different eras, right? I might have very different criteria for the Bible versus the Quran versus Joseph Smith's text, right? Because we know more, for instance, about Joseph Smith's time period than we know about, the Veda, when the Vedas were written. Okay.
So, let's see.
So there's not, again, it's irrelevant because we can just use your criteria. Your criteria is that if it's somehow established that there are historical errors and contradictions in the Bible, that's enough for you to think that you shouldn't be a Christian anymore.
Due to what the apparent contradictions in the Bible?
Well, that's besides the point. You brought up the criteria of reliability. I'm saying that we can just use your criteria. Your criteria is that if there are historical errors and biblical contradictions, then the Bible's not reliable enough to be a Christian.
The historical errors such as what, like?
But you understand what the historical errors are is different than the question that you're raising to the other two is, hey, what's your criteria? We'll just use your criteria.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. And then now we can proceed finally with what he wanted to say, deconstruction, and Ian wanted to say.
Yeah, to second what Danny's saying, if this book is from God, if it's divinely inspired, I would put a very high standard on it. If I found even just 2 errors in it, I would find that very sus.
Oh, it's suspicious? If there's 2 errors?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you pose one?
Sure, I've got a bunch. We can go to 1 Chronicles 21.
1 Chronicles 21.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the story of when David took a census of Israel and God punished him?
Vaguely.
God sends the prophet Gad to give a choice of 3 different punishments for David to pick from. And that story is told twice in the Bible. It's told in 1 Chronicles 21 and 2 Samuel 24. And there's a deviation. There's multiple deviations in the story, but there's one deviation that I want to talk about now.
Mm-hmm.
It says, Gad came to David and said to him, "Thus saith the Lord, take your choice, either 3 years of famine or 3 months of devastation by your foes, while the sword of your enemies overtake you, or 3 days of the sword of the Lord, pestilence on the land." So you've got 3 options: 3 years of famine, 3 months of devastation, or 3 days of pestilence. When you go to the parallel account in 2 Samuel 24, they're slightly different. It says, Gad came to David and told him and asked him, "Shall 7 years of famine come on your land, or will you flee for 3 months before your foes while they pursue you, or shall there be 3 days pestilence on your land?" So in 2 Samuel, the first punishment is 7 years instead of 3.
Okay. Well, so this is the contradiction from 1 Chronicles?
Yeah, it's a contradiction between Samuel 24, 2 Samuel 24, and 1 Chronicles 21. So there's only 3 options, and the first of the 3 options is different between the 2 accounts.
Wait, 2 Samuel, 1 second. Okay, 2 Samuel, what's the chapter?
2 Samuel 24,
Yeah.
verses 12 and 13.
Go and say unto David, "Thus says the Lord, I promise you 3 things. Choose you one of them, that I may do it unto you." So God came to David and told him, and said unto him, "Shall 7 years of famine come unto your land, or will you flee 3 months before your enemies while they pursue you, or shall there be 3 days pestilence in your land?" Answers you, I answer. Okay. And what's the Chronicles?
In Chronicles, the first option is 3 years of famine. In Samuel, the first option is 7 years of famine.
What's the actual verse in the Chronicles?
It's 1 Chronicles 21:12.
Right, 3 years famine or 2 years to be destroyed before your foes. Oh, at the sword of your enemies overtakes you. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, there actually is a commentary on this. Give me a second.
Oh, there's a lot of comments on this problem. I've read all of them.
Yeah, what would it be?
Which one? Do you want the Protestant or the Catholic correction? Because the Catholic/Orthodox correction would probably boil down typically to scribal transmission errors.
Or is that Haydock's interpretation?
I don't know anything about Haydock's. I don't know what he says about it.
Wait, what's the interpretation you're referring to here?
There's two possible corrections for this. The correction that you're probably familiar with is that it's a scribal error that was transmitted.
Okay, what's the second one?
The second one is that in 2 Samuel 24, there was actually a previous famine, and that Gad is adding years onto a prior famine. But that would be an incorrect fix for the text, because the text specifically says that Gad said something. So the question we have to ask is, did Gad say 7 or did he say 3?
Okay, so so yeah, I do see the commentary you're referring to where it's being referred to as a it says this apparent discrepancy lies in the error of the Hebrew manuscripts. The Greek Septuagint, which is a translation of a much more ancient version, reads 3 years famine.
Which is not exactly true, because the Greek Septuagint is not necessarily older than the Hebrew manuscripts. It's just different from the Hebrew manuscripts.
So why is this? How's this commentary wrong then?
Because the Greek Septuagint is not older than the Hebrew manuscripts.
No, I don't think that's not what it's positing. It said the Greek Septuagint is a translation of a much more ancient version.
It's a translation of Hebrew texts, and
Yeah.
what we don't have are the Hebrew texts that the Septuagint translated this from. So to say that the translation into Greek was of a different text that was correct is just wishful thinking.
So the commentary I'm seeing, right? If they were to hold to the position that it could have been a scribal error, what would the objection be?
The objection is we have no evidence that it's a scribal error.
Like according to the.
And the better question is, why is there scribal errors in this book? Is God not able to preserve his holy word?
Sure. I mean, what do you mean? What are you asking? Like, why does God allow for there to be scribal errors in the book?
That's what I'm asking. Why would God allow his book to be transmitted full of scribal errors?
Yeah, I don't really like engage with why arguments. I don't know, like, what am I going to say to that?
You've been asking us like like these types of questions, like
Why is not an argument?
yeah, you've been asking like tons of questions, like
Like what?
constantly. You can't appeal to like questions aren't arguments after you've been responding to our questions with like
Yeah.
more questions.
The New Testament says that every word of God is valid for a reproof and rebuke. But if we don't know what those words even are, how could we ever come to trust this text?
So due to the scribal errors, it negates the reliability of the text.
Not just the scribal errors. There's
Yeah, of
historical errors. There's theological contradictions. There's failed prophecies.
Yeah, but specifically talking about scribal errors, would this be a negation of reliability?
Yeah, it would.
A scribal error?
Yes, a scribal error would, because we don't have evidence of the original reading. All we have is a contradiction. Now, if we found a manuscript that predated all of our existing manuscripts that were in Hebrew that had a different reading, then we can say somebody made a mistake along the way. But it's awfully curious that we hold to this book as being inspired. God went through all the trouble of making sure the book was written, but then he got lazy when it came to transmitting it.
Not necessarily. So, would this same contradiction be in the earliest manuscripts? Maybe I.
Yes, it is. This contradiction is in all of our early Hebrew manuscripts.
Like which, the Dead Sea Scrolls or what?
This particular contradiction did not get found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's in all the other Hebrew manuscripts.
Why is it not in the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Because this particular section of Samuel was not found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're too badly damaged.
Interesting. Yeah, but holding to the position that it would be a scribal error, if I was to hold to that position, what would like be the objection to that be? Like, why did God allow scribal errors? The objection.
Well, first of all, we've got two problems. We don't know that it's a scribal error. That could be the original text.
Yeah, I mean that's
The
what the
second
comments
thing,
say.
yeah, the second thing is that even if it was a scribal error, I think that would be problematic, because why would God inspire a holy book through the mouths of his prophets and writers, but then not actually preserve it so we know what it says?
Yeah, what's your evidence that it's a scribal error?
According to the commentaries.
And how do they know? What's their evidence?
Do you want to ask them? What do you mean?
The point is that they don't have any evidence.
Can you like demonstrate that?
Yeah, just that there's like no source available to it. That like what Justin's saying like is pretty clearly just that there's like this is all what they hope to be the case, but they have no evidence of this.
I highly doubt that. I'm pretty sure if it was to be looked into, and I'm pretty sure they looked into it sufficiently to come to that conclusion. They're
Prove
not
it.
just like asserting that. Yeah, that's why I initially stated if I was to look into it sufficiently. That's why I posited that they.
Gotcha.
must
But
have-
at the current state, you have no evidence to support that it's a scribal error.
I mean, I have the commentators, the commentaries.
And how would they know?
According to I'm presupposing that they did sufficient research.
So
Okay.
presupposition.
Yeah, their position. I'm presupposing their position for them to be deemed as reliable commentators. They must have had sufficient knowledge on the topic, right?
I don't think they did.
Can you provide that?
You're the one claiming that they had sufficient evidence. I'm
Yeah, it's a
saying that I
presupposition.
don't believe that they did.
Yeah, but I'm presupposing that they did due to the
Well,
fact that they're included in the list of
Okay.
commentators.
Well, I'm presupposing that they didn't.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, wait, so why would you presuppose that?
Yeah, so I'm presupposing that due to the fact that a lot of people aren't deemed as reliable sources for commentaries and for these individuals that I'm looking at to be listed on this site, that they must have vast theological knowledge to be listed.
I think that's a poor presupposition.
That's a poor presupposition.
But whether it's not a theological issue, it's a written issue, right? So I think the best case for you is something like, look, they start with the idea that this is the word of God inspired, and so it's got to be a scribal error. That's probably their reasoning, which, is not going to be something that's going to be historically valid argument for why it would be a scribal error. They're probably theologically motivated to think that it's a scribal error.
I can't really posit that. I'm not really
What was
familiar.
that?
Yeah, I can't really conclude.
Because otherwise, then they wouldn't
Accurately.
come across empirical data to show that it's likely, or to show that it's a scribal error. But usually with these sorts of things, if I were a Christian, I'd be like, look, I have more confidence in the truth of Christianity than some kind of possibility that it's something worse than a scribal error. So then you infer that it's a scribal error, but that's not historically legitimate. It's a theological motivation, in other words.
So they're just presupposing that it is a scribal error? Is that so you're
Well,
posing?
I don't want to say that. I'm just saying that it's probably theologically motivated.
I can't really conclude on either, but yeah. I
Okay,
can't
but
really
you would, to be clear, you would affirm that the Bible contains falsehoods.
scribal errors. Sure.
Falsehoods. Like any type of falsehood. Does the Bible contain falsehoods?
I'll agree that it could contain scribal errors in certain
Wait,
circumstances.
because you were really ringing me to say that inductive arguments aren't valid, so I'm not going to let you off the hook on this one.
Yeah,
Does
and
the
I
Bible
answered.
contain falsehoods? I just need to hear you say that the Bible contains falsehoods.
I answered. I said it could have scribal errors.
Wait, say falsehoods.
I said it could have scribal errors.
So you needed me to say that inductive arguments aren't valid
Yes,
in a
because it's like a
logical
common
sense, but
fact.
you absolutely will not say that it contains falsehoods because you recognize the tactic.
No, it's like a common fact that
Yeah, wait.
inductive
So then,
arguments are invalid.
if you're being good faith and consistent, you can just answer the question as I posed it. Does the Bible contain falsehoods?
Yeah, I'm being consistent. This would be like an ambiguity fallacy. Like, yeah,
Wait, does it contain falsehoods? Yes or no?
this would be like an ambiguity fallacy. What do you consider
Wait, does it
falsehood as?
contain falsehoods?
What do
Yes
you
or
consider
no?
falsehood as? This would be an ambiguity fallacy. What do you consider
Wait,
falsehood to
does
be?
it? But if it's so, could it be the case? Could it be both that God or that Gab? What was his name? Was like fucking Gab.
Gad.
Gad offered 7 months, and also Gad offered 3 months. Could that be the case?
Did I not just like respond saying, according to the commentaries, it's a scribal error?
Yeah. Wait, but I'm asking you. That's not an answer to my question. Yes or no? Could that be the case that it's both 3 and 7 months?
It's a loaded question, and I already
It's a yes or
answered.
no question. Can I get
It's
the
not.
yes or no?
It's a loaded question.
Wait, you're refusing to answer
There's a
questions.
fallacy machine, bro. That's
We
not what I asked
got
you.
a running Randy over here. Can I just get an answer to the question? Yes or no? Is that possible?
There's a fallacy machine.
It's a really easy question.
It's a really easy question.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an ambiguity fallacy, and it's in a loaded question.
Wait, it literally is just a yes or no question. Is
It's
it
not just
possible
a
that
yes.
the person said both 3
Just a
months
yes or no
and also
question.
7 months?
Yeah, I just posited when deconstructing brought it to me. I said,
You can't answer.
"Can I finish?"
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I answered deconstructing, saying that according to the commentaries, it is a scribal error, and that's what he initially posited. And yeah, so I can hold to that position, right?
Well, I didn't posit that. I don't actually think it's a scribal error.
Yeah, but that's what you said that the commentators say, right?
No, I'm saying that's the one you're probably the most familiar with because that's usually what the Catholic and Orthodox say. To be sure, we have no evidence that it is a scribal error. We have lots of evidence, though, that the chronicler constantly changes the details from Samuel because Samuel was written before Chronicles. And when Chronicles retells the same story, he has a tendency to change details.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
there's like 30 different stories that they share together where the chronicler changes details. So this is just like one of many.
Yeah, so like Ian, could I like hold to the position that it's a scribal error? Did that answer
Yeah,
your
but a
question?
scribal error is it's a falsehood. That the book as written contains falsehoods.
Oh, what would be your definition of falsehood?
Yeah, just that something that's not in line with reality. It's not possible that it's in line with reality for
Your
it to both
definition of
be.
falsehood.
Wait, and I know you want to pivot away. We're just taking that as like a basic one. I haven't read too deeply into theories of truth.
That's your definition.
But we're
of
just
falsehood.
gonna like take it to be the case that no matter what your definition of falsehood is, that it can't both be true. That Gad said 3 months and also 7 months. That one of these things must necessarily be a falsehood.
I just posited that it's a scribal error. I'm pretty sure that.
Yeah, and that would be a
that makes your-
falsehood.
That makes your question invalid. Yeah,
It
your
would be a
question is
falsehood. A
invalid.
scribal error would be a falsehood.
Your question is invalid.
Wait, how do you know that any? Wait. What do you mean by my question is invalid?
Yeah,
do you think
because I
valid?
already
Wait. So
answered.
valid is a
So I can't
property of
answer. You asked me a question
arguments.
and I can't answer.
Valid
it.
is an valid's a property of arguments. A question is not an argument.
Yeah. So you asked me a question and I don't get an answer. Right?
Gotcha. Go for it.
Yeah. So you asked me the question saying, would both of them be possible, like mutual exclusivity? I said that I already answered to deconstructing, saying that it could be a scribal error according to the commentaries.
Yeah, the implication of that is no, it's not possible.
No, what is not possible?
That it's not possible that it's both of these. That one of them is true, or I mean, it's possible that both of them are wrong. But like, I don't know. Let's say that like one of them's true. One of them's true, but if one of them's true, that means the other one's false. So the
Okay,
Bible contains falsehoods.
I'm posing, is a scribal error a falsehood?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah, in this case, it seems to be.
That's only in this case?
Well, there are scribal errors that don't create contradictions.
Such as which?
There's a bunch. In fact, in the passage that we just read,
Yeah.
there are copying errors that don't create contradictions. For example, when it talks about the pestilence is described in two different manners. One description includes more detail than the other, but just leaving details out is not necessarily a contradiction.
Okay, so if positing that it is a scribal error and it was in line with one of the narratives, like what would the objection to that be?
One narrative would be wrong, which would mean the Bible says something that's untrue.
Wait, I don't think you heard my question. I'm saying that if there's one narrative, right, and if I'm holding to the position that it was a scribal error, one narrative is true and another is a scribal error.
Untrue.
Yeah. So describe saying it's a scribal error, would that be sufficient reasoning?
It would still be something that is untrue, is what
I
we're
think
saying.
the point of the scribal error is kind of, I'll use an analogy. You know how there's like the phrase "gods don't bleed." What if someone were to say that they're a god and they don't bleed, and you give them a paper cut, right? That's not a serious mortal wound, but for the position that they don't bleed, it's enough to cause a problem, right? So it depends on the kind of Christian you are. Some Christians are totally fine with saying that, yeah, there are a lot of scribal errors or whatever deconstruction is saying. I don't study the Bible, but there's this overall theological message that's been preserved. You could go that direction, but if you're the kind of Christian that wants to look at the Bible similar to how a God looks at their body and that they can't bleed, a scribal error is going to be a paper cut.
Okay. But would you consider a scribal error as falsehood, by the way?
Well,
Yeah.
If by falsehood means does it generate a false statement? Yes. But I think what you're saying is that falsehood, has a severe negative connotation. There are, if you wrote a biography and there was a copying error, is there falsehoods in your biography? Yes, in the sense that there are false statements, but perhaps it's not like being deceptive. Falsehood, has that really strong negative
Yes.
connotation. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Are there any other objections?
When a good example would be if people misspeak, are they uttering falsehoods? Usually we would say no, they just misspoke. And if you want to say a scribal error is like misspeaking, then fine, but it's just weird that God is misspeaking, so to speak.
And remember, all of this is because we're demonstrating whether or not the book is reliable. So it doesn't matter why it's unreliable. The question is whether or not it's unreliable.
Okay.
And there's dozens of these examples. Some of them are not scribal errors. For example, in Exodus 6, 2 through 3, Yahweh makes a very definitive statement to Moses. He says, I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name, Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them. Okay, that's a pretty definitive statement. But when we go back and read the narratives of the patriarchs, God does reveal his name Yahweh to them. And in fact, it leaves their own lips. In Genesis 15, God says to Abraham, I am Yahweh who brought you from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But Abraham said, O Yahweh God, how am I to know that I shall possess it?
In
It's
Genesis 15?
Yeah, just a flat contradiction.
What's the verse?
Genesis 15, 7 and 8.
He said, Lord God, how would I? So in the Hebrew it says Yahweh?
Yeah. In the English, when you have the mini caps where it says the Lord, the underlying Hebrew text says Yahweh.
Genesis 15, verse 7. Let's see the Hebrew. Okay. I am Yahweh who brought. And what was the initial verse you said? Be positive.
Yeah, it's going to be Exodus 6, 2 through 3.
Exodus 6. And God spoke unto Moses and said unto him, I am Yahweh, and I appeared unto Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by the name of Almighty God, but by my name the Lord I was not known to them. Genesis 15. Wait, Genesis 15 is talking about who?
Abraham.
Let's see. Abraham seek after these things. The word of the Lord came on Abraham. And if it is saying, fear not Abraham, I am your shield. Abraham said, Lord God, what shall I do? Yeah, I could pose that this is like the different persons within the Trinity.
Oh, you definitely
Not
don't want to
even
say that with
close.
Danny here.
Okay. Yeah, I've like spoken to
Because
Danny.
Yahweh is not the name of the Trinity or of Jesus. Yahweh is the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's just simply saying that before this current time period, your forefathers knew me as God Almighty, which was El Shaddai.
Okay, so if I was to oppose that, what would the objection be?
If you were
How would you oppose it? Sorry, go ahead, Danny.
if let's say, and this is a question for you, DC. He's saying that if Trinitarian doctrine is correct or whatever, would that be enough to get out of the problem or not?
No, I don't believe so, because this is the forefather or the actual father of the Godhead speaking here. This is Yahweh.
Okay, so this is Yahweh speaking in Genesis 15, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and here he says, I'm the Lord that, wait, what's the verse?
Exodus 6:2-3.
No, in Genesis.
Genesis 15, 7-8.
7 through 8. Okay, and he says unto him, I am the Lord that brought you out of your. Yeah, in Genesis, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could posit that it's referring to the Trinity in this, because if I look at
It's
Exodus,
not. It says, I am the Lord. That's Yahweh. Yahweh is a very specific figure.
yeah, because in Genesis 15:1 it reads, after these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, and I'll hold to the position that the word of the Lord would be Jesus, right?
No. The
No,
word of the Lord is referring to his speech. God spoke to this person.
so the word of the Lord came unto Abraham. The word of the Lord
Yes.
spoke to Abraham.
Yes.
Okay, so utterance can speech. Wait, I was actually talking about this. So wait, speech can say something.
In this particular case, the answer would be yes, but that's not supported by the text that we're reading.
Okay, okay, okay. So in Genesis 15:1, when it reads, "The word of the Lord came unto Abraham in a vision." Though it
It came
was,
to,
yeah, it came to him in a vision. So the
yeah,
words just came to him visually. Words came to
yeah.
him visually.
No, that's how it happens. Whenever the word of the Lord comes to somebody, it says the words Hadabar or Hadabarim
Yeah.
just means the speech of somebody came to somebody else. We have the same thing referring to physical people. The words of such and such king went out to so and so.
In the vision, like he was able to see utterance. He was able to see
No,
speech.
that's not my claim. No,
No, that's what it says. It says the word of the Lord came unto Abraham in a vision.
it says to Abraham.
It says unto Abraham. I'm reading
Well, I don't know why your translation says unto, but it means the same thing. It means to.
yeah, exactly. So the word of the Lord came to him in a vision. So was he able to see these? Like these are like empirical things. He was able to see the
No,
words.
he heard the words in a vision,
Wait, where are you getting that from?
because that's what words are.
No, see, yeah, that's not what I believe. See, you're positing like what you think in it. I'll hold to the
No,
position that
that's what words mean.
no,
When it talks about somebody's words,
mhm.
it's referring to words.
I'll hold to the position that the word of the Lord is Jesus, and when he's saying that he came unto Abraham, like I don't understand how utterance can be seen with his eyes or whatever.
It's not seeing, it's saying. That's why it says lemor in Hebrew, which is it's an infinitive. It means it's an action that's ongoing.
in a vision.
Saying in Hebrew, yes. It literally says that it came to Abraham. El in Hebrew means to Abraham
Yeah.
in a vision, saying le amor.
What does a vision mean? Is this yeah? What do you hold it as?
Clearly a dream.
No, like what's the definition of a vision?
A vision in the Old Testament is almost always a dream.
No, like what's the definition of vision? Like,
I just told you, in the Old Testament, a vision is typically a dream.
What's the accepted dictionary definition of vision?
Well, I don't care. It's something that you experience that is not in reality.
Okay. A vision is something you experience that's not in reality.
Yes, a vision, when it's being referred to in Genesis, is when God reveals something to you. And in Genesis, it's almost always in a dream state.
Okay, so the vision. Okay, so does vision have anything to do with like empirical data or evidence? Like, is he seeing this? Does vision refer to the eye?
He's clearly hearing it,
No,
which
like,
is why it says,
I'm just asking
why
you a
it
question.
says, which is why it says lemor, which
Yeah.
means to hear. He's hearing something.
Yeah, but I'm asking you, is vision referring to something empirical or what, or like, what is it?
It's either a dream or a mystical spiritual experience, one of the
So
two.
vision equals dream now? That's the definition of vision, is a dream?
Yes, quite often. There's lots of dreams that are visions in the Old Testament. When you read the story of Joseph, when Joseph gets the vision from God in the dream, same word.
So let me just search up. So you reject the definition of vision?
Wait, do you think definitions are propositional?
No, like I just want to see. I'm
What do
asking
you
the question.
what do you mean reject the definition? Definitions
Yeah,
aren't
because
propositions.
he's saying the definition of vision is a dream. Like,
Well, definitions aren't propositional, but it seems what Justin is saying is that the way that this word is used is to refer to like visions that happen in dreams.
okay, so Ian, is a vision a dream?
Depends on what your definition is.
Well, I think
My
what we
defi-
should be concerned about is how did whoever was writing the text, how were they using the term? So
And
DC wants to
clearly,
say that
yeah.
typically when Old Testament writers use that term to mean dream, I think that's the idea.
Okay, so what you're saying is that every time a vision is being referred to, it's talking about a dream.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying the Hebrew word makzeh refers to a spiritual experience.
15:3. 1 second. Let me get it up. Okay, so let's see.
Which is why in the passage, as I've already pointed out, whatever was happening, it was being spoken. That's why it says that it came to Abraham saying, whatever it was speaking.
Okay, so what's the word for vision?
In this particular instance, it's makzeh.
How do you spell that?
I mean, do you know Hebrew, or do you want me to give you the English transliteration?
No, like I have it in front of me. I just want to make sure we're looking at the same thing.
Do you want the Hebrew?
Yeah, the transliteration.
Okay, so you're probably going to have an M, and then a CH, and then a Z,
Yeah.
and then an H.
Let me just make sure.
Damn, that's one hell of a word.
So
I know. Well, there's no vowel. There's no vowels in Hebrew. You have to supply the vowels. It's a little cumbersome.
Interesting. So did you just like freestyle the vowels?
Well, they did for a long time until the Masoretic scribes came around about 200 to 300 CE, and the Masoretic scribes said, no, we know what the vowels are supposed to be, because the vowels are important. They changed the meaning of the words. So they actually added the vowels to the Hebrew texts about 200 to 300 years after Jesus.
okay.
Okay.
I have a question, because if you're holding to the definition of vision means dream, in this exact word, like I just went to like the Strong's conclusion.
I didn't, so I'll just try this again.
Yeah.
A makzeh
Yeah, I know.
is a spiritual experience.
Yeah, I'm holding to that. Well, I'm holding that. You. That's what you're
Yes.
saying. Okay,
And
so
in that spiritual experience,
Mhm.
somebody spoke to Abraham.
yeah, but I disagree that when it says vision, it's referring to a dream because that same word is used in a different area. And
I never said that when God spoke to Abraham, it had to be in a dream. I'm just saying that
no,
when
no,
it's
no, no, no.
used,
That's not what I'm
when it's
disagreeing with.
used, it
Okay.
often refers to a dreamlike or ecstatic state. It's
Yeah.
irrelevant if he was asleep when it happened or if he was awake when it happened. The question is what actually happened. And what actually happened was God spoke to Abraham.
That's not what I'm posing here. I'm asking you the question, right? That let me go back to the Hebrew word. The word for vision here is mahazeheh, right?
Close enough.
Mahazeh or something. So this word is used in a different instance because I'm saying that when it's being referred to in Genesis 15:1, that is referring to Jesus here. Because
It's not, though.
yeah, because wait, my interpretation of this, and let me make sure it's in line with what the Father say. Yeah, so when it says yeah, perfect. So when it says
Introducing the Trinity to this only makes your problem worse because it literally says that Yahweh appeared to Abraham in a vision, saying. So all you're doing now is just demonstrating that the Trinity is incoherent because even
oh
in
wait, that's not what it
Trinitarian
says.
doctrine,
That's not what it says.
Jesus is not Yahweh.
That's not what anyway, that's not what it says. It says the word of the Lord came unto Abraham in a vision.
Yes, that's the
Yeah, so
word of Yahweh.
the word of Yahweh. So is the word of Yahweh literally his utterance, or is it possibly
Yes, it's his utterance.
hypostasis? It's his
It's
utterance.
his utterance.
Okay, so his utterance came to him in a dream. That's what you're positing, right?
That's exactly what I'm positing, and I think it's quite clear if you just read the passage.
Yeah, but I'm saying that vision is not referring to dream. And like the same word that you were talking about, it does not mean dream.
It doesn't matter if he was dreaming it or if he was wide awake when it happened. It's a spiritual experience.
Yeah, but
He's getting a vision from God, and in that vision, God says things to him. And what he says is, I am Yahweh who brought you from Ur of the Chaldeans. And then
yeah,
Abraham replies, but, O Yahweh, how am I to know?
mhm,
According to Exodus, Abraham did not know the name of Yahweh.
mhm. So in this same word mahaze or whatever it is, it's
I
also
don't know
used
why you're hung up. We're talking about whether or not Abraham knew the name Yahweh.
yeah,
This has
but
nothing to do with whether he was awake or dreaming.
I'm saying that you literally answered affirmatively saying that vision is referred to in a dream or like a supernatural sense, and I'm saying that's not the case.
Ortho, that has nothing to do with the contradiction.
Yes, and
It
I'm saying
doesn't
it's not a
matter if he was
contradiction
dreaming
because
or awake.
I'm saying
The
it's not a
question
contradiction
is the
because
contents.
can I please finish?
Did Abraham know the name of Yahweh, yes or no?
My initial what are with these fallacies? Anyway, my initial question was that it was a
He can't answer yes or no.
I
Ortho,
can't answer
did
yes or no.
Abraham know the name of Yahweh?
My initial response was that this is
Did
referring to Jesus,
Abraham
right?
know the name of Yahweh?
Was that my initial response?
It's
Wait, can we just get like a
irrelevant.
yes or a no?
Wait, was that my initial response?
Did Abraham know the name of Yahweh?
Let me see. According to Genesis 15:1.
Thank you. And that directly contradicts Exodus 6, where it says, I appeared to Abraham and Isaac as God Almighty, but by my name Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them,
Yeah, I
which
asked you a
means
question by the way when I repeated it, and
they should not have known
I just
the
like can't
name of
finish it.
Yahweh.
Okay, I can't finish it. So when it's talking about Genesis 15:1, I'm saying it's referring to Jesus. What would the objection to that be?
The objection is not which member of the Trinity. We're talking about whether or not he even knew the name of Yahweh.
Okay, did you say okay? According to the Trinitarian doctrine, who is Yahweh?
It's irrelevant. The question is, does he know the name of Yahweh? It's very easy. One text says that Abraham and Isaac and Jacob did not know that name.
Yeah.
The other text says he did know that name. The Trinity doesn't help you here.
The Trinity does not help me here, so like I'm not able to make a distinction.
It doesn't matter who in the Trinity you think is Yahweh. The question is, do they know the name of Yahweh?
According to the Trinity, right?
The
Who's
jumping jacks these guys have to do,
what's the jumping jacks?
the gymnastics you have to do over the plain reading of the text is embarrassing.
Oh, so I just like shouldn't have any context, right? I should just read it how it is, right?
That's not
The-
what Justin said, but you're like
I
you're
asked him
like
a
bending over
question.
backwards. It's like crazy mental
Yeah,
gymnastics.
that's terrible rhetoric. But deconstruction,
Oh,
right?
wait, and I agree that you can use like the Discord rhetoric on me. I bet
Yeah,
if I
Discord
looked
rhetoric.
up like, you know, Glocks, you're probably in Glocks. What am I saying?
Who the hell is Glocks?
Never mind. Never
Alright.
mind then. Surprising.
Deconstruction. I was asking you though. I'm not able to input the Trinity into this at all.
No,
Even if you did, it's not going to help you.
He's saying whether you put the Trinity in or out. The issue, the contradiction he wants to say there is present is that in one verse suggests that Abraham knew that this name of Yahweh, whoever that refers to, doesn't matter. That we're talking about the name itself. In one verse it suggests that Abraham does know the name, and in another verse it suggests that Abraham doesn't know the name. Whatever the name refers to this person or that person or even different persons, right? It's presumably the name that is being questioned in terms of whether Abraham knows it.
One second. I think I can make the distinction, but
I don't think you can,
why not? Why not?
because the Trinity isn't going to help you. Is your distinction based in the Trinity?
Yes.
Well, it's not going to help you, because the Trinity is identifying three different persons within a Godhead. We don't care which person this is referring to. All we care about is whether or not Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew the name of Yahweh.
Okay, so could I not just say that this is referring to? I mean, can I not just say that? What is it? Genesis 15 verse 1 is referring to the Son.
Genesis 15, 7 through 8. And no, it doesn't matter, because we're not talking about which member of the Trinity. We're talking about the name Yahweh. Does he know the name Yahweh? And the clear answer is that he does know the name Yahweh, which contradicts Exodus 6, 2 through 3.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure like if I was to like read into this right, that the answer would be the distinction between the persons.
It
I'll
wouldn't.
give you an example of what's happening and I'll apply your solution to see if it works. Suppose I have a 6-year-old son, right? In one case, I say they know the name of Superman, okay? But in another case, I say they don't know the name of Superman. And then what you're pointing out was, hey, look, Superman is Clark Kent. He's not Peter Parker. It doesn't matter what the kid believes about who Superman is exactly or who the name refers to, whether it's Clark Kent or Peter Parker. The claim that I'm making is that my kid knows the name Superman. Whoever that refers to, right, is an independent question. Does that make sense? So the name of Yahweh is one, that's the name, right? You're saying, well, look, it can refer to this person or this member of the Trinity. Fine. The point is that just the name itself, does Abraham come to know it in this verse, but in another verse, does it suggest that no one knew, or did Abraham doesn't know the name? And then that's where the question lies.
Give me a second.
Because while you're looking it up, because I know you part of it is reading the verses. In the Superman case, right, it'd be a distraction to say, hey, but Superman is Clark Kent, not Peter Parker, right? Well, but my claim was that my kid knew the name Superman. It doesn't matter who the real true identity of Superman is, that they still know the name.
So making a distinction between the persons won't solve the problem.
Well, do you see how it doesn't solve the problem in the case of my contradiction with my 6-year-old son? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So the name Superman, who that refers to exactly, the true identity of Superman, doesn't matter to the fact that if I said, hey, my kid knows that name, and then the next day I say, my kid doesn't know that name, I've contradicted myself.
So it doesn't exactly
So
solve
someone
the
says,
contradiction.
so taking the verse, if one verse says Abraham knows the name of Yahweh, okay, whether you say that refers to Jesus or the Father or whoever,
Yeah.
right? And then the next day, the verse says, Abraham suggests that Abraham doesn't know the name. The doctrine of the Trinity isn't going to solve the problem, as I understand. Maybe DC is saying something more than that, but that's how I understand.
No, that's what I'm saying is it doesn't matter who you think Yahweh refers to. It says that he didn't know the name of Yahweh.
That's the objection I'll pose to. I guess I need a. I don't know. Yeah, that's the objection I'll pose to it. I would be referring to the Trinity, but the exact response, I'm not sure.
Maybe I want to understand you. Why do you think? Maybe I'm missing what you're saying, Ortho. Why do you think the Trinity solves the issue? I'm just wondering.
So I opened on Genesis 15 verse 1, and then I just read the first line. It says, "And these things, the word of Yahweh came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram." And then I'll be holding to that. Here it's talking about Jesus, and then everything after this is also Jesus talking to Abraham.
Okay, but in that verse, does it say that Abraham was made aware of the name of Yahweh?
I am the Lord. Yes.
Okay, so we have that truth. Okay, now if there's fine, let's just implement your doctrine about that the utterance, the word of God is Jesus. But at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is that those verses suggest that Abraham knows the name of Yahweh. Now this other verse, okay, suggests that he doesn't know the name of Yahweh. So how does the Trinity help here?
Okay. Genesis. Yeah, because then I'll put. Wait, what's the Exodus word? The Exodus verse. Sorry.
It's Exodus 6:2-3.
2, 2, 3. God understand the Lord. Yeah, so if I was to hold that, since the word of the Lord is not explicitly stated here, that it's referring to the Father.
But we're not talking about the word of the Lord.
We're talking about the name of
talking
Yahweh.
about the name of Yahweh.
So in that Exodus passage, would it suggest that Abraham did not know that name of Yahweh? And if you say yes, then there's the contradiction. If you say no, then you have a different interpretation than deconstruction, and then y'all would have to hash it out.
Wait, in the Hebrew, is it Yahweh or Adonai being used?
It's technically neither. So in the original Hebrew, it says Yahweh. In the Masoretic Hebrew, some of them say Yahweh, some of them say Jehovah, but Jehovah is a combination of Adonai and Yahweh. And they put it in the Masoretic text as a way of protecting the divine name, just like in our English Bibles, it says the Lord.
Wait, there is a commentary on this. That's okay. I don't know, because in all of the commentaries I'm seeing, it's saying, my name is Adonai. My name is Adonai.
Yeah, they do that in commentaries as a way of protecting the name of Yahweh. The same reason why Jews today say Hashem instead of Yahweh.
Yeah.
It's a sign of respect.
Okay. The name within me protecting God is the most proper name of God.
While we're waiting for that, make sure you're double tapping on that screen, dropping a follow as well if you're enjoying the debate so far. If you want to join the community, you're 18 or older, there's a link to the Discord in my bio. I'd love to see you there. Only join if you're 18 or older. It's discord.gg/allegedly.ian. It's if you want to support the stream, Venmo's allegedly-ian, Cash App is just allegedly Ian. Both are in my bio. Appreciate any and all support. Keep on double tapping on that screen though. Let's get all the way up to 250k likes. Oh yeah, we're doing we do reading groups in my Discord. So this week we're doing a reading on presuppositional apologetics and how to deal with people who run presuppositional apologetics. So if you're interested in joining the reading group, I would love to see you there. It's just gonna be a really good time. And I'm really excited for it. But we meet every Saturday at 7 p.m. We had a group, like a little reading philosophy group, just this last Saturday where we covered like basic philosophy terms and concepts. Ortho, do you have anything? Do you have a response yet? Or are you still working? I can keep yapping if you're still figuring something out.
And it might be that kind of issue where you have to get back to us. But I don't know. I mean, you'd have, at least get back to DC because I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, I probably will. I'm not familiar with this.
Okay. I'm probably if that's the end of the conversation, then do you got anything else?
No, not really. I'm probably gonna just Google.
Yeah, well, appreciate you coming on up here.
Of course, man. God bless.
Yeah. Damn, what a slog. Huge W, Justin, by the way, and big W, Danny, as well.
Hey, good to see you, Danny.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Ian. At least.
I'm probably ending stream soon, so I didn't know if either of you were going live.
I won't be, but it was good joining you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I probably won't go live either, but you have, do you started streaming when? You stream for how long?
I streamed for like 5 hours. It's first we started with the lesbian topic with Sam, but then we got banned for you know, because they hate the lesbian topic. TikTok hates the lesbian topic. And then started again on this topic because I won the appeal. And then I'm pretty sure Dean is live on Matt's account, unless of course
I saw that.
Matt is pulling like 6k viewers on his own, which is like, you know, totally possible. He would deserve it, of course, but that would be an anomaly if that were the case. So I'll send you all over to Dean, who is live on Matt's account, rockin.librarian. But I love all of you. Thanks so much for coming on out here. Make sure you're dropping a follow. If
See you,
you
Ian.
see you later, Danny.
Bye,
Yeah, great to talk to you. Yeah. Both of you should come up on the future. I'd love to have y'all on here.
Yeah, I'll definitely be around, man. Keep cooking.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, if you want to, again, if you want to join the community, if you want to join like the little reading group, it happens 7 p.m. every single week on Saturday. I'd love to see you there. It's discord.gg/allegedly.ian. I notify you every time I go live. I hang out in the live. I'm very active in it. I talk all the time in my Discord. If you want to join the Discord, discord.gg/allegedly.ian. You do got to be 18 or older, but I would love to see each and every one of you there. It's a cool little place. I notify you every time I go live. Active. It's friendly. All the people are really nice. But other than that, love all of you. Make sure you're dropping a follow. I hope to see you all there, and I'll see you all later. All right, bye-bye. See you in